little bit warmer.
I'm regretting not bringing a hat. Peter? Paul. Oh, sorry, Paul.
The other
I was waiting on
Peter.
Peter Isaac.
No,
Of course. Good to see you, Paul.
He's not as handsome as I am.
That's true. You are pretty suave.
Tomorrow morning.
Saturday morning?
The do?
I think I have to do the wedding show, but I'm not sure what time. I'm a DJ.
So what? Oh, you're a DJ.
But I think you said Sunday. Sunday should be okay.
Then I can't get it on Sunday for papers.
Oh, I hear what you're saying.
I don't know if that matters, but see, what I'm worried about is then I'm off Monday. So it's a holiday.
Right.
So, but I
Well, I don't know what time I have to do that show because I'm doing the wedding show.
I'm not late today.
Late today? Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
I do that at 5. We'll talk. Darn work stuff. I do have a real job.
What I hate is outdoor press conferences this time of year.
Well, we could all try going inside, but we know how that works.
Admit it, I'm soft, okay? I'm soft. Admit it.
And having the last 3 months.
I never really seen you at all when I had my druthers.
Well, that's
Well, you know, some things I just can't control.
Well, this is Peter Isley and Collins. I don't think this is going on right. I don't think that you'd be time to organize any kind of a thing.
Should be starting soon.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this. Okay.
No, this is kind of more orderly. This is a call for tree giant intervention and statewide.
No other reason for
I don't like the schism between the entertainers and the diocese and all that. Well, that's, you know, I think the way the guy from Snap put it was that diocesan listings have squiggies over his force, including now kind of
I
thing.
just slip this here,
And
and it
that's
won't pin anyone's way.
But
All right, Carl, thanks.
yeah, and Isley's probably got more.
doing really well.
Peter. Where's your hat? Isley, crazy man. That's your Peter. Not your Peter, you know what I got it. Yeah.
No, survivor. Don't ever call me that again. I want to be the right tool to be in the church.
Are you doing any video or can I get in front of you?
It's live. It's been live the whole time, so there we go.
I just don't want to get in your way. But I also don't want to.
You're clear.
Told you I was alright.
Work is spontaneous. These are all photos of survivors of childhood sexual abuse by priests, and they have granted permission to have their photos as children. This is the age in which they were assaulted.
Okay, I got down on.
Thanks for coming today. My name is Peter Isley, I-S-E-L-Y. I am a founding member of SNAP, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. SNAP is an organization that's been in existence for over 25 years. It includes some 20,000 victims of childhood sexual abuse by priests from around the United States. I'm from Milwaukee. I was sexually assaulted and abused as a child by a Wisconsin priest. This is Alice
Hodak, H-O-D-E-K. I am locally a SNAP representative here in our area. I'm not a survivor myself, but I'm a mother of a son who was assaulted at age 14 here.
It's really important that also about Alice, who's in support with our group, has led our group here in Green Bay for many years, has talked to many survivors of sexual assault in this diocese, and she's getting a lot of calls, as you might imagine, over the last couple of days, and she'll be talking about that, and her experience with Bishop Ricken, she'll talk about that, and her son's case. Alice's son was sexually assaulted by a Norbertine priest, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, to talk about the list and who's not on that list, and to insist that every cleric that has sexually assaulted and raped a child in this diocese is identified by this bishop. So there's three things we really want to highlight. First, victims in this state, of which there are hundreds, are calling today upon the new Attorney General of Wisconsin, Josh Paul, to begin and launch an investigation into the diocese of this state concerning the sexual abuse of children and the cover-up of those crimes by the bishops of the state. And I'll talk a little bit about that. There are 15 states now and the U.S. Department of Justice that have opened investigations of dioceses like this one, where there has been demonstrable evidence and proof that there has been a history of decades of covering up child sex crimes. It is long overdue in the state of Wisconsin that this is done here. And there is more evidence of abuse and cover-up in this state, and I'll talk about that, than in many of the states that have launched investigations. The second reason why we're here is to talk about that list that was released yesterday. That list is partial, it is biased, and it is incomplete. And we're going to discuss why that is the case and why it's dangerous not to have that list complete and to suggest in any sense that it is false. So that's the second reason why we're here. And the third reason we're going to talk about is what it's been like for victims in this state to undergo the trauma and horror that they have underwent as children, and what the response has been by this diocese and other dioceses in the state, which is very consistent with what law enforcement and the attorney generals around the country have been discovering. So let's first, I guess, talk about that list. There's 40, what is this total?
I knew you were going to ask, but 46. There was one not represented on the list that they said.
When you release a list of priests, clergy, you know, first of all, you've kept that list secret for a long time. Why have you kept it secret? Why are you releasing it? When you release that list, you have a duty and a responsibility and an obligation to let the public know and to let survivors know, in particular, that you know which clergy and which priests sexually assaulted and raped children, because you know who they are. And what counts about that list is that any cleric that has worked or lived in this diocese is ultimately under the authority of this bishop. Every single cleric that has lived here or worked here in parishes and ministries is only here by the permission under church law of this bishop. The bishop here is ultimately responsible for that. That list that was released is not complete. It's not a list about people, clerics who have not paid their library fines. These are not minor crimes. These are crimes against children. You have that information. You have those identities. And you have to release those names and identities. You have the authority to do it. And we insist, as survivors, and we think the public is insisting, that you do that. Other bishops that have been releasing names in the last few months around the United States have included in their list of abusive clergy every cleric that they know of that has abused children, including religious order clerics. It is simply unacceptable that Bishop Rickett has not done what these other bishops have done. He can do it. He can do it today, and he needs to do it.
That's why I felt it was so important for me to be here today to support those survivors that yesterday did not have validation. The person who abused them right here in Green Bay or De Pere or within our diocese, that they are represented and that they understand that, you know, we're still here to support them.
Thank you. The other thing is a name doesn't give you the information that we deserve and the public deserves and that we need to know. That's why we want the Attorney General involved. For instance, when you got that report, what did you do with it? Who knew about it? What are all the parishes and ministries that this offender was in? Did you transfer this sex offender when you found out that he had been raping and molesting children? That's the information
that we need to have. That's why, if you look at the Pennsylvania Grand Jury report that was released this summer, and why other attorney generals are investigating, what you will find, and you're going to find it here, is that there has been a widespread, systematic abuse of children in this diocese. And what's very important is that church officials knew about it, that they covered it up. And that's what needs to be investigated, and that's what needs to be given a full account and understanding of how that happened and who's been involved in it. Secondly, and this is very particular to this diocese, in 2007, Bishop Zubik, who was the former bishop of this diocese, ordered, and this has been proven and demonstrated by admissions by church officials here in 2007, and these are admissions in court depositions, that Bishop Zubik ordered the systematic destruction of criminal evidence of child sex abuse by clerics in this diocese. So when Bishop Ricken says we've undergone this review again of these files, what files is he talking about? That evidence is gone. That needs to be investigated. And those files were destroyed because this diocese was about to face civil lawsuits concerning the institutional cover-up of these crimes by the bishops of this diocese. In November, the U.S. Department of Justice ordered every bishop in this country not to destroy the very files that Bishop Zubik destroyed here in Green Bay. Now, if that's not a reason to have an investigation about criminal conduct and cover-up by this diocese, I don't know what reason you need. So there is a particular reason why we feel that the Attorney General of the state needs to investigate and report to the public what has been going on in this diocese for decades and what action the senior management of this diocese has taken and demonstrated to you and shown to you that its evidence is in court already about this shredding being done. And that needs to be investigated. And finally, our third point. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I was raped as a child by a priest. I was a boy. It's very difficult to put into words the life-altering and life-changing event that takes place when you are assaulted as a child. There are victims in this community, in this diocese, that aren't here anymore because they've taken their lives. That is not an unusual outcome of child sexual abuse. And we have worked with these families and have had to live with the loss of their children and their brother or their sister because of these crimes. They have not seen justice. Survivors in this community, in this state, have not seen justice for what has happened to them. How many of these individuals on this list have seen criminal justice for what they've done? How many have been in prison? How many of them have been arrested? How many of them have been investigated? This long history of sorrow, of horror, and I've just told you, of death, needs to be addressed. And what happened yesterday is not the end of this issue, it's the beginning of this. And that, again, is why we need what we have not had here for so many years. And that is the law and the Justice Department of this state, the Attorney General, to look into this. The only authority that we have any confidence in to vet that list of names how these cases have been investigated. Who is not on that list is the Attorney General of the state. And until that's done, we don't feel anybody can have any real confidence that what the crimes that have taken place here and the cover-ups that have taken place here have truly been investigated and fully reported to the public, and that there are consequences and accountability for the crimes that have taken place here. Alice?
Well, I'd also like to add, you brought up people that have been deceased, and yesterday Bishop Ricken had talked about deceased priests, and often there are victims. He talked about the age of some of these cases. Victims have also passed away since then. But in a lot of those cases, their family members knew they were survivors of priest abuse. And those families also are seeking closure and healing and justice for what happened in their family. This isn't a matter of immediacy. Some of these people are gone.
Particularly with the issue of the Norbertines. The Norbertines are not the only religious order here that are in the diocese that are under the authority of the bishop. Religious orders are, known historically to have routinely transferred these sex offenders. That's what attorney generals are finding out. That's what these investigations are discovering. How many of these religious order priests and clerics that have abused children are alive today, have been transferred to other parts of the country? These are all things that need to be investigated. And these are all things that Bishop Ricken can have done and order. I mean, look, I didn't hear anything in that press conference about him meeting with these religious order officials and saying, look, I'm going to release this list of names. I've got the names because every religious order cleric that has abused the children has to be reported to this bishop. They have to be involved in the disposition of that case. They have to do that under their own law. And he says, I've got these names. I'm going to release them. Period. He didn't do that. He made no effort, it appears, whatsoever to make sure that this list is complete. He hasn't done it. And so the question is, why hasn't he done it? Why hasn't he done it? He hasn't done it because it involves priests that have abused children. It involves cover-up. It involves religious order officials working together to make sure that a full and complete account of the crimes that have taken place here and how they've handled these crimes are not going to be known by Catholics and by the public. I don't know if you saw the Gallup poll last week, the National Gallup poll. 2 out of every 3 Catholics, according to that Gallup poll, says that priests are not ethical and trustworthy. Catholics are saying that. That's been the result of these crimes and these cover-ups. Imagine that. Now, I don't think that's a particularly fair conclusion to make, but that's what happens when you do not give full transparency and accountability, and there's not accountability for what you've done and the conduct of your officials. The problem of this issue has always and ultimately come down to the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. And what they have done to cover up these crimes and not be held accountable for what they've done. That's where the problem is. It's not fair that it's been spread to priests and everybody else. It's not fair, but that's the result that you get. Catholics have lost their confidence in the Catholic Church. Many Catholics, the public have lost their confidence in the Catholic Church. The Pope himself is gathering a historic meeting of bishops from around the world in February to address this because it's a global problem. It's a problem within the system of the Catholic Church. Reform has to be made, and this is not the way to go about it, by not giving full account of what you've done and the knowledge of all the individuals that you know that have sexually assaulted and harmed children.
Why is it reasonable to assume that the bishop is merely extending a courtesy to the abbey or the abbot, and if the abbot comes out with something less than complete, then is the time for him to call him on the carpet for not having done a complete disclosure? Or do you think the bishop should have saved his release until the abbot was done with his?
I think the point here is pretty simple. You know, and you have known, priests, clerics in this diocese that have sexually assaulted and abused children. You have that information. That's information that the public needs. That's information that Catholics need. You need to release that information. Period. He has the authority to do it, so he should do it.
Have you heard anything back from the DOJ?
Pardon?
Have you heard anything back from the Attorney General's office?
No, we just sent that letter today. That's going to be up online. It's an open letter, so it'll be online on our website by the end of this press conference. So we're hoping to meet with him, victims and survivors in the state. We'll meet with him and talk about this to bring that evidence. It's not just in this diocese. The bankruptcy in the Milwaukee Archdiocese, there were 575 victims who filed into that bankruptcy a few years ago. That took 5 years. Most of the criminal evidence in that bankruptcy by those victims, those are direct victims reports, are still sealed in federal court. They have not been investigated by law enforcement. They have not been investigated by the Attorney General. What we do know from those court proceedings is that in the Milwaukee Archdiocese alone, there are over 100 offenders, alleged offenders, in that diocese that have not been named and investigated. Those are completely secret. Those are completely unknown to the public. That's why the Attorney General has to investigate what's going on in these dioceses and the information that's there. This is a very document-rich state when it comes to the sexual assault and abuse of children. I've told you, there's more evidence here than many of the states that have launched investigations. So it's long overdue. And the only authority that anybody can have confidence in is the Attorney General of the state, who's responsible for law enforcement in the state, crimes that have taken place in the state, to do a thorough review. Just a few weeks ago, the Attorney General of Illinois, the bishops of Illinois, had said, well, we've released names. We've been transparent. We've let everybody know. Well, the Attorney General, in her review of those files, issued a preliminary report a few weeks ago, and there were 500 names of clerics that they didn't report. That's 2/3 of all priests that have alleged to have abused children in that state. That's 2/3. And so that's the pattern that we're seeing around the country. And it's likely that's the very same pattern here. But this bishop has openly said, hey, look, I know, and we've told you there are at least 16 for sure Norbertines that have sexually assaulted and abused children in this diocese. I know about this. I know who they are. I'm not going to tell you who they are. I'm not going to tell you who they are. I have the authority to tell you who they are, and he does. But I'm not going to do that. And so the question is, why aren't you going to do it? Well, because of some flow chart? Like, this is how we're deciding? I'm going to decide, well, I'm not going to do it? He has the authority to do it. He needs to do it. Where's the difficulty here? Where's the problem here? Where's the holdup?
You mentioned in your press release that they have printed it elsewhere. Do you know where that was? Where you got those 16 names that you listed in your press release?
And that's from 2004, so that's a long time ago. So there's probably a lot more than 16, we're assuming, since that time. That was the John Jay study that was commissioned, John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, that the U.S. Bishops commissioned in 2004 to review the number of offenders around the United States. And the Norbertines had 16 offenders who had assaulted children that they reported to that study. So we know it's 16 in this diocese. But they have released no identities, no information about that since 2004. So we know that it's 16. That's for sure.
Do you take exception to Rickard's use of the word substantiated charges as well? I mean, he listed what he calls substantiated accusations, and the implication is there might be several that Snap would also name and knew more about them than what the guys think about them. You're not spoken to that.
Well, we do have survivors who have alleged other clergy in this diocese and around the state that have abused children that are not on any of these lists. But what's really important is that when law enforcement, when the attorney generals are looking into this, what they're finding, like in Illinois and Pennsylvania and elsewhere, is that many of these cases have not been properly investigated, that victims have not been treated very well, that, like in Illinois, personal information was routinely used against them so that they would not report these crimes. So that's been the problem. What we're looking at here is what the bishop and his paid consultants that he's paid, that what they've determined and decided is substantiated. Now the problem is that they've destroyed so much criminal evidence, they've destroyed all these files. How are we going to make these determinations? That's the problem here. You cannot take criminal evidence, hundreds, probably thousands of pages of criminal evidence, treatment records, direct admissions by offenders, and destroy them. Because that's what was done here.
Do you know of any other diocese that has that retention policy, a similar one?
No. And so the question with Bishop Zubik, now he's under investigation, his diocese, by the U.S. Department of Justice. And so I'm sure they're looking into this. But the question is, did he do the same thing in Pittsburgh? Because there's no evidence that he did it in Pittsburgh. He just did it here. And he did it here on the eve of a Supreme Court decision that would open them to liability for fraud in covering up child sex crimes. That's no accidental timing. And so if he didn't do it there, why did he do it here? He took that evidence, and that includes evidence that victims needed if they were going to be able to take their cases to court. And he destroyed all that evidence of those crimes. But the other thing is that when law enforcement now, if there's an offender that they're looking into, and they need that criminal evidence from the past in order to make their case, that evidence isn't there anymore because they destroyed it. And there has to be accountability and responsibility for that kind of institutional conduct. And there hasn't been. So it needs to be fully investigated, completely investigated. And there's no acceptable response except full cooperation by this bishop and by the officials of this diocese. By the way, the person who shredded those documents with his staff was Father John Dorfler. Dorfler, after he destroyed these documents, was promoted. He's now the bishop of Marquette, Michigan.
Ms. Hodak, I know we're all freezing to death out here, but is your son okay? Do you know
Yes,
who abused him?
Yes, Father James Stein, he was convicted of assaulting our son, and he was an Norbertine priest. So he was not, Father Stein was not on the list released yesterday. And there are other people in our community who would have liked to see their loser's name out there publicly to give them some validation and some credibility, I suppose.
Are you aware that Abbot Dane Radecki has come out and said that all allegations against Norbertines have been proven false, when in fact Jim Stein was the only one charged and was convicted?
I have not heard that.
Do you have anything to say to Abbot Dane Radecki for issuing a press release that was carried by Channel 2 saying that all allegations against Norbertine priests have been proven false?
Well, that, if you look at and we've linked this in our release, if you look at the 2004 John Jay study and their response to that study, what the abbot said in there is that of those 16, most of those allegations were true. So I don't know what he's talking about, because that's not what they said about those 16 clerics.
Are you aware that Angelo Feldkamp was recently just cleared of charges because he is in too failing health to face extradition? The Brown County District Attorney has refused to prosecute him.
No, that's new information.
News to you? Yeah, that is news.
I don't know what it means to be cleared.
Angelo Feldkamp abused me in high school. I was actually classmates with Mark Hodak. Jay Faustner raped Nathan Lindstrom and has yet to face charges.
Again, this shows once again the only person who needs to be looking into these cases and substantiating whether these cases are true or not is law enforcement and the Attorney General of the state. I mean, this is the same pattern that we're seeing all across the United States.
And we're all freezing. Perfect timing here.
Oh, let's go. For a second, I thought-